Hi there, this is my spoiler-free review of the first book of the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, The Way of Kings. And man, I have to admit, I like this one. It was really good. First, I'll go over what the book was about, then I'll give you my personal opinion. And I'll also have a section at the end where I'll share my favorite moments. But if you haven't read the book, I'll just have a spoiler warning and you can just skip that part. Alright, so the book is set on the world of Roshar, and similar to Mistborn, there is a ranking system. There are the light eyes, who are the upper class, and obviously they have light eyes, like light colored eyes, and the dark eyes, who are the working class, and they're self-explanatory in the name. They have dark colored eyes, and there are ranks within the dark eyes and the light eyes, but that really comes later on. So for now, you should know that a dark eyes can serve as high as a soldier and as low as a slave. So that is really cool about the rank system. There are also gender norms. So for example, fighting and war is deemed a masculine art, whereas reading and scholarship is considered feminine. So men can't even read or write, and they require female wards to read books out aloud for them, and that's how they gain their knowledge. Another big element of this book are these tiny creatures called spren. So they appear when there's a change in someone's emotion or a change in nature. So for example, around an angry person, there will be anger spren. Around someone who's afraid, there will be fear spren. Or for instance, in nature, let's say it's gusty, wind spren will be visible. So that's how spren kind of work in this world of Roshar. Moving on to the magic system, which I thought was definitely more nebulous than in Mistborn, because in Mistborn the magic system was just explicit. You get certain abilities from certain metals and then you become enhanced. Whereas in the Way of Kings, the magic system slowly unveils in the end. There's things like soul casting, infusing stormlight, there's surge binding, which I think it's better if you read it, then you get a better understanding of it rather than me explaining it here. So I think that's something you should read. Another important thing that I forgot was that there are shard blade and shard plate, which are these powerful armor and weapon that are helpful in war. They are priceless. People have sold kingdoms, cities to obtain them. So there's also high storms, which are strong tempests that occur every so often, and you're supposed to stay inside one so you can stay safe, because these things wreak havoc. I mean, they bring destruction with them. Now on to the actual story. The book starts with an assassination of the king of the Alethi kingdom by the Parshendi, which leads to this war of attrition which has been going on for 6 years now. And then a chapter later begins the story of this character Kaladin, who is seen as a squad leader in an army, and he's a warrior. But then a few chapters later you see him as a slave, and then you find that stupefying, because wasn't he fighting a war previous chapter? And so after that you get 6 years of his life's flashback, and that's how his life gradually unveils as the book progresses. So I thought his character was very interesting. Now there's another character, Shalon Davar, who is in search of this scholar Yasna, and she aspires to be her ward. She is portrayed as a witty person. She is well read, and she sketches like I breed. Half of the time in the book she's literally sketching, and there's other secrets about her that are not revealed until later, and so that's all I can say about her. That is not going to spoil. Another character was Dalinar, who was the brother of the assassinated king, and he once used to be this renowned warrior called Blackthorn, but now in his twilight years he's lost his battle vigor. He's not as battle hungry as he once used to be, and him and other high princes of Alethkar are fighting the Parshendi as retribution for killing their king. Dalinar feels that the war has been going on for too long, and the real meaning behind the war has been lost, which was to exact revenge. He feels that the high princes are induced into fighting by the gemstones. Alright, so this part is going to contain heavy spoilers, so if you have not read the book, you can close the video right now. This is actually warning, it's going to be heavy spoilers. Now starting with Kaladin, man, I'm an unemotional person, but when reading Kaladin's tragedy, it didn't quite tear me up, but I still felt the emotion. Watching Kaladin destroy that Shardbearer and then being betrayed by Amaram, subsequently being sold into slavery, how impotent he must have felt when he wasn't able to save his friends being killed in front of his own eyes, and he was tied to the ropes, not being able to do anything. That part hurt. It was really emotional. And the part where Kaladin wanted to save Dalnar's army, I was angry and happy at the same time. Angry because I knew that Kaladin could have escaped with his bridgemen. He could have left all the turmoil and madness. But then he remembered one of his father's sayings, which was, "Do the right thing because it is right." And if there's no one that takes that first initiative, then there's no one that one can look up to. And there was another saying that it is not the destination that matters, it is how you arrive there. And the destination is death. And he realized that even if he escapes with his bridgemen, he's still going to have that struggle. Death is still going to be contingent. And that he might as well do something nice before dying. And so he ends up going to save Dalinar and his army, and he was successful. Another part that I remember was when Dalinar gave up his shard blade to Sadeas as a payment to buy Kaladin and his bridgemen. And I remember Kaladin asking Dalinar, "Why would you do this?" And Dalinar, and this is not gonna be verbatim, this is just in my memory. Dalinar said, "What do you think a man's life is worth?" And Kaladin said, "Other Lyrais say that it is worth 2 bromes." Bromes was a currency on Roshar. And Dalinar said, "What do you think?" Kaladin responded, "I think a man's life is priceless." And then Dalinar responded, "Coincidentally, that is the exact value of a shard blade. Today you rescued 2,600 priceless lives, and all I had to do to repay you was give up 1 priceless shard blade. I call that a bargain." That moment was the best in the whole story. Like, nothing surpasses that scene. That was my most favorite. Now, my opinion on the character Shallan. So I personally did not like her. I'm reading Words of Radiance right now, in which her character is getting a little more interesting, but in The Way of Kings, there was little to no action revolving around her. I thought her character was dull, and she was stressed out most of the time. And then her flings with Capsule, and him just dying like that in the end, like nothing happened. I think Capsule could have had a more significant retreat from the world. Like, the author could have made known to us that he has some soul casting abilities, and he taught Shallan. And then for Shallan to continue using that ability, Capsule had to die, or something along those lines. Like, not poison. That's just boring. Do not die with poison. Like, that kind of ending is just mundane to me. Now, talking about Dalinar, I thought there was limited plot dedicated to him, but I enjoyed reading about him trying to decipher what his visions meant and staying loyal to the codes despite the anarchy in the other High Prince's war camps. And there was one quote that Dalinar said when talking to Sadeas about the thrill. You know what the thrill is if you've read the book. And it went, "A man's emotions are what define him, but control is the hallmark of true strength. To lack feeling is to be dead, but to act on every feeling is to be a child." And so I enjoyed reading about Dalinar, but I think there's definitely more to come in the remaining books, because I want to know exactly what caused those visions. And I know they told us a little bit about the purpose of Dalinar's visions. It was that the Knights Radiants are returning, and there's going to be destruction on Roshar and Parshandi being Voidbringers, but it's not quite cohesive, right? And I know there's going to be more in the remaining books. So it's not a complaint at all about The Way of Kings. It's because it was revolved around Kaladin and a little bit around Shallan, but Dalinar was the least seen character. Now let's talk about Zet Sun Vallano, the Toothless of Shinawar, who wore white on the day he was to kill a king. That was the first line of The Way of Kings. And he really doesn't get much dialogue in the actual book, but what stood out most to me was his action scenes. Him lashing onto the walls, killing kings, killing guards was so evocative. I could actually imagine that, because usually when reading books, I just want the action scenes to be over, but in this one, I was actually enjoying them. So I thought his action scenes were the most prominent. Now I'll give my final remarks on the book. I think it's a must read if you have the time. So it's 1250 pages long, and if you take breaks between days and not read it, it will get irritating and you'll not be able to finish it. But if you read it in one flow, then I think it's a must read and you will enjoy it. Yeah.